8 hours ago, something happened in space that should not be possible, and it began with what looked like a routine observation. On February 20th, 2026, at exactly 4:12 UTC, the Hubble Space Telescope aimed a standard ultraviolet calibration pulse toward the coordinates of an object known as 3 Atlas. This is the kind of procedure astronomers perform without a second thought. The expectation is simple. The light travels across space, strikes the surface of a comet, scatters in random directions, and fades into darkness. Comets are rough, icy bodies. They absorb energy. They do not act like mirrors. But this time, the universe did something different. 7 minutes after the pulse made contact, a sensor inside Hubble's Wide Field Camera 3 failed. It burned out. The reason was not a glitch. The light that had been sent outward returned almost intact. Imagine shining a flashlight into a forest and receiving a sharp, focused beam directly back into your eyes with nearly all its original strength. That is not how nature behaves. Yet the returning signal came back with 98% of its intensity and struck the receiver within 0.004 degrees of perfect alignment. That level of precision requires geometry, not chaos. It suggests engineering, not erosion. When engineers at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center examined the data, they did not treat it as noise, they escalated it. To reflect light that efficiently, the object cannot be ordinary ice or rock. The recorded reflectivity exceeded polished aluminum. At that moment, 3 Atlas stopped being a comet. It became something else entirely. And if that alone sounds unsettling, what followed is even harder to explain because the signal that returned was not identical to the one that had been sent. Before we confront that detail, we must revisit what scientists believed this object was just weeks ago. When 3 Atlas was first cataloged on December 19, 2025, it was classified as a hyperbolic comet, a fragment of frozen gas drifting through our solar system from another star. Its path was modeled, its brightness predicted. Everything fit within established physics. But the events at 4:12 UTC shattered those assumptions and forced astronomers to reconsider everything they thought they understood about this object. The reflection event was not dismissed as a single malfunction. In science, one strange reading can be ignored, 2 might raise suspicion, but 3 form a pattern that demands attention. Within minutes of Hubble registering that intense ultraviolet spike, automated alerts moved across observatories worldwide. Other instruments turned toward 3 Atlas, and what they saw confirmed that the first reading was real. Hubble recorded a sharp artificial peak lasting exactly 0.4 seconds, a signature consistent with a flat, highly reflective surface rotating into view. Not a jagged rock, not a cloud of gas, but a plane. The James Webb Space Telescope immediately repositioned its NIRCam instrument to measure infrared heat. If this object were a comet, sunlight should warm its surface and create a thermal glow. Webb detected nothing. The object remained cold, indicating it was not absorbing energy but reflecting it. At the same time, the Very Large Telescope in Chile, using the espresso instrument, observed the same reflection from the ground. 3 independent systems, operating at different wavelengths and locations, reached the same conclusion. The calculated albedo was 0.96. Fresh snow reflects about 0.8. Polished aluminum reflects roughly 0.9. 3 Atlas exceeded both. Then came the rotation pattern. At 4:15 UTC, reflectivity measured 98%. At 4:16, it dropped to 0. At 4:17, it returned to 98%. This was not chaotic tumbling. It was a precise oscillation, like a lighthouse beam switching on and off. Natural bodies fade gradually as they turn. This snapped on and off like a digital signal. The object showed no coma, no gas cloud, no signs of sublimating ice. It was solid and exposed, reflecting Earth's signal directly back. But the true shock emerged when scientists analyzed the spectrum of the returning light. Hubble's outgoing pulse was pure ultraviolet. The returning beam lacked absorption lines entirely. That means the surface absorbed almost nothing. Even the best mirrors on Earth absorb a small fraction as heat. 3 Atlas reflected 99.98% of the radiation. Such performance requires engineered metamaterials, structures designed to manipulate electromagnetic waves. These are built in laboratories, not found drifting naturally in interstellar space. And then, at 5 UTC, the situation escalated further. At 5 UTC, the Deep Space Network antenna DSS-43 in Canberra detected a frequency shift in the reflected signal that did not align with normal orbital motion. In physics, when waves bounce off a moving object, their frequency changes through the Doppler effect. This shift allows us to calculate velocity, but the shift recorded was too large. For a natural object to produce that change, it would need to accelerate toward Earth at 40 kilometers per second. 3 Atlas was not accelerating. Its trajectory remained stable. The only explanation left within known physics was that the surface itself was moving independently, perhaps vibrating at high frequency, or that the object was actively retransmitting the signal with added energy. The energy received on Earth was 14% higher than expected from perfect reflection. A cold rock cannot amplify light. It can only absorb or reflect. Adding energy implies an internal power source. That realization shifted the debate among scientists. Theory A proposed an unknown exotic state of matter capable of near-perfect reflection and energy amplification. Theory B suggested artificial origin. Before consensus could form, new data arrived from the ALMA Observatory in Chile's Atacama Desert. The signal was not only stronger, it carried structure. When Hubble transmitted its pulse, it was a simple continuous wave, like a single sustained note. The returning beam was interrupted in precise intervals. It was modulated. A natural surface cannot insert breaks into a continuous wave. Modulation requires a mechanism, a system capable of processing and reshaping incoming energy. The pattern recorded was not random noise. It followed a sequence of prime numbers, then paused for 12 seconds, then repeated the sequence in reverse. In radio astronomy, natural phenomena do not count. Pulsars produce steady pulses. Solar flares create bursts of static, but neither generates mathematical sequences. This was structured information embedded within light itself. That discovery forced scientists to confront a possibility they had long treated as theoretical rather than immediate. 3 Atlas was not behaving like a passive object, it was responding. And as further measurements came in, the strength of that response continued to grow in a way that raised even deeper questions. The modulation pattern held another detail that was impossible to ignore. The gaps between pulses measured exactly 1.618 seconds apart, aligning with the mathematical constant phi, known as the golden ratio. This constant appears in natural spirals and geometric relationships, but its deliberate use in signal timing suggests knowledge of mathematics. The return signal was no longer a mirror image of what had been sent. It was a modified transmission. By 5:30 UTC, the signal was faint but structured. 10 minutes later, it was 20% stronger. Within an hour, it had increased by 400%. The growth was steady and measurable. More importantly, the direction of emission was shifting. The broadcast was no longer aimed solely at Hubble's position. It was directed toward Earth. Observatories confirmed 5 critical facts. a coherent 0.4-second reflection, validation from multiple independent instruments, a 14% energy surplus, prime number modulation embedded in the signal, and rapid amplification over time. These were recorded observations, not speculation. The central question then became unavoidable: what happens when the transmission arrives? If this object is a passive relic, a dormant beacon left behind by an extinct civilization, then humanity is witnessing the most significant archaeological discovery in history. If it is an automated probe designed to activate upon detection, then our outgoing pulse may have triggered a programmed response. If it represents active intelligence, then the implications extend beyond science into survival. Light requires time to travel. The reflection detected earlier occurred hours before it reached Earth. The broadcast, now intensifying in space, is already on its way. As scientists monitor the data stream, they report that every 18 minutes the modulation changes, adding new mathematical layers. Based on current measurements, Earth will receive the full transmission in 4 hours and 12 minutes. Telescopes remain fixed on the coordinates. Receivers are active. The Deep Space Network continues recording the evolving signal. Whatever 3 Atlas is sending, it is no longer silent, and when that message reaches Earth, it will demand an answer. Stay with this channel for verified updates, and subscribe now so you do not miss what could become the most important transmission in human history. As the countdown continues, control rooms across the world have shifted from curiosity to controlled urgency. Engineers are no longer debating whether the data is real. They are preparing for impact, not physical impact, but informational impact. The Deep Space Network is isolating bandwidth to prevent interference. Redundant recording systems are running in parallel to ensure no packet of data is lost. Every 18 minutes, as predicted, the modulation evolves. The prime sequence expands, incorporating larger numbers, then compresses into tighter intervals. The structure is layered, almost as if the transmission is building towards something. Analysts have begun mapping the pulse spacing against known mathematical constants. Beyond the golden ratio, timing, secondary harmonics appear to align with pi-based intervals. That level of internal consistency is not characteristic of random astrophysical noise. Natural signals degrade with distance and turbulence. This one is stabilizing. The signal-to-noise ratio is improving as it strengthens, which suggests directed amplification rather than passive diffusion. Meanwhile, orbital tracking confirms that 3 Atlas maintains its hyperbolic path. It is not adjusting course toward Earth. It is not slowing down. Whatever process is generating the transmission appears independent of large-scale motion. Some researchers have proposed that the object may contain rotating panels or surface segments capable of dynamic alignment, effectively steering the broadcast without altering trajectory. Others argue that the increasing intensity could indicate phased array emission, a technology humans use in advanced radar systems. None of these explanations fit comfortably within natural models. Inside NASA briefings, language remains careful. Terms like non-standard reflectivity and anomalous modulation are used in place of speculation, but the data continues to accumulate. Spectral analysis now shows microvariations in frequency spacing that resemble encoding layers, similar to multiplex digital communication. If this interpretation is correct, then the initial prime number sequence may have been only a header, a handshake protocol establishing mathematical common ground. That possibility has shifted the focus of teams worldwide. Linguists, mathematicians, cryptographers, and signal processing experts are now involved. This is no longer purely an astronomical event. It is a decoding challenge unfolding in real time, and as the remaining hours narrow, a deeper realization settles in. If the signal contains information, then the next question is not just what it says, but whether it expects a reply. With less than 3 hours remaining before full reception, simulation models are running continuously. Supercomputers are projecting how the amplified beam will interact with Earth's magnetosphere and atmosphere. So far, all projections suggest the transmission is informational rather than energetic in any destructive sense. The frequency remains within non-ionizing ultraviolet and adjacent bands, converted into readable data through instrumentation. That provides reassurance, but it does not reduce the magnitude of the event. A coordinated international protocol is forming quietly behind closed doors. Agencies are agreeing that if the message resolves into structured data, it will be shared with global scientific institutions before any public interpretation is released. Transparency is essential, but so is verification. False patterns can emerge when humans search too eagerly for meaning. That caution remains critical, yet the mathematical foundation already present reduces the likelihood of coincidence. Prime sequences, harmonic ratios, consistent timing intervals, energy amplification beyond passive reflection, all converging in a single object passing through our solar system. Statistically, the overlap of these factors approaches impossibility under natural conditions. Meanwhile, the signal continues to intensify. Receivers report that the amplitude curve is no longer linear. It is exponential. Each 18-minute interval adds complexity not only in sequence length, but in dimensional layering, as if multiple channels are being interwoven. Analysts describe it as moving from Morse-like pulses toward something closer to a data stream. If this is deliberate communication, it is escalating in sophistication. That progression implies awareness of response time. The object does not need to approach Earth physically to establish presence. It has already achieved contact through light itself. And here is the point that changes perspective. Humanity did not detect this transmission passively. We initiated it. Hubble sent the first pulse, the object answered. That sequence of cause and effect cannot be ignored. Whether accidental or intentional, our observation triggered a reply. As the final hours approach, the focus shifts from disbelief to preparedness. Instruments are calibrated to maximum sensitivity. Backup observatories stand ready in case of atmospheric disruption. The world waits, not in panic, but in focused anticipation. Whatever arrives will reshape scientific understanding overnight.